Hello, and welcome back to another video of mine. Today, I thought it would be fun to redesign Highgarden and Spice characters. Now, why am I redesigning Highgarden and Spice? Well, the show is a train wreck. That's why. That's the only reason. I haven't actually watched this cartoon. Let's be honest here, it's not an actual anime, it's a cartoon. It looks like any other Cartoon Network show. I've seen bits and pieces on YouTube, I watched reviews, I watched some reactions of the show, so I know kind of some things, but not really. So I thought it'd be fun to take these ideas, create characters completely from scratch, and take some ideas here and there that I do know. Now, for my redesigns, I was heavily inspired by mythology, folklore. I found some Scottish folklore, some folklore on dwarves, everything like that. I didn't deep dive into this. I just found some surface level things that I thought, hey, this is interesting. I'm just gonna take this. So for Rosemary, I was inspired by like medieval knights and their armor, and I think it's cool. And so I gave Rosemary that kind of armor, and gave her some protection for her arms, and she is the kind of, I guess, a knight character. She has a sword, so why wouldn't she be a knight? I give her pants so she can actually move around and fight. It would be kind of hard to fight with a dress, and also, I just don't understand her dress. It's just, I don't get it. It's just so weird. I don't know. I can't explain it. Are those supposed to be shoulder pads, or is that just part of the dress? I gave her like the very anime pigtail things, because this was supposed to be inspired by anime, and I just don't understand her hair. From what I read, Sage is a witch character, and I guess in her design she is very witch-like. And for her as well, I was inspired by medieval witches, I guess. So I was inspired by like the witch trials, and so I just took that kind of aspect of the regular witches without the like weird hats and stuff. And so I gave her just like a hood, a long robe, since she's like a secretive character. I also read that witches had like familiars that were like devils or something, and so I gave her a little bird. I gave her an amulet in this design, but I think I forgot to draw it in the main picture. For Parsley, I gave her long hair, made her a bit more unkempt, gave her an apron, gave her some tools to hold into a pocket, so gave her armor. And for the armor, I found like some German medieval armor and gave her that. I made her as well like sleepy. And it's not because of just one picture, it is because of the folklore. I also read somewhere that the dwarves had black hair, but I did want to keep her blonde hair, so I made up a thing like, oh, their hair becomes black, and then they just die from overwork, and it was like, okay, that's dark, I love it. I gave her a bag that she can hold her arrows with. I read that she's an archer character. I hope that's correct, because she doesn't have a bow in her picture. I, again, was inspired by medieval archers, so I gave her some medieval archer-esque kind of things. I gave her pants, because she can run around, be more agile. I kept her like long, flowy, Merida-esque hair. Now we can get into the story part. Rosemary is a bright and happy girl. She would do anything to be like her mother. Rosemary's mother always played with her and told her many enchanting stories. Stories of courage, ancient beasts, and family. Family. Something that is the hardest for Rosemary, ever since her mother vanished. One day, when Rosemary was 5, she bounced out of bed in delight. Rosemary always loved sword lessons with her mother. She grabbed her wooden sword, her shield, and ran out of the door, not even greeting her tired father. Rosemary lived in a small village, her house being the furthest away, the perfect place for privacy. Rosemary didn't know why her family loved living here. There were no monsters to fight. She ran down the path to a small clearing, their secret place. Her mother wasn't there yet, so she sat on the ground and waited, waited, and waited, but nobody came. She grew worried. Her mother was rarely late, so what was holding her up? Rosemary couldn't wait any longer and stood up. If her mother wasn't going to come find her, then Rosemary will just find her mother. She walked back the same path, called out to her mother. Maybe she had just gone to check up on one of her neighbors. Her mother was always helpful like that. She walked to her house and just stood at the door. Where could her mother be? How could she miss her lesson? Rosemary was beginning to become annoyed. She opened the door and marched inside. Her father was still sitting at the table, drinking his coffee. "Where's Mom?" Her father looked up. "Wasn't she outside?" Rosemary shook her head. "Strange," the father said. Her father stood up and walked over to Rosemary. "Well, just grab some breakfast and wait a bit. I'm sure she's just on some errand." Rosemary sighed and walked over to the kitchen, but her mother never came. Rosemary hit the dummy again. She had been practicing her hardest every morning. She never stopped working. How else was she supposed to be like her mother? Rosemary's mother always told her, "You have to grow up and become a strong warrior. Then you can continue my work. Work that I won't be able to do anymore when I grow old." Rosemary always wondered what her mother's work was. Her mother never said, but Rosemary had always imagined everything. Her mother must have fought monsters and protected everyone. That's probably why there were no monsters in their village. She hit the dummy again and sighed. She wasn't getting anywhere anymore. It's like she has anyone that can teach her. Her only friend is a witch with no sword knowledge. Her father can't teach her, as he can't even lift an axe. Rosemary scoffed. She would have to find more books on sword fighting, but reading was so boring. Rosemary continued to work on her skills every day, until she found an advertisement. An advertisement to a school for every skill class. This is perfect. She could go to the school and develop her skills. Then she'll be able to find her mother. But she would have to be accepted first. Rosemary hoped her skills would be enough. But no matter, even if she doesn't get accepted, she'll just have to work harder and try to get accepted another year. Hopefully. Poor Rosemary, feeling a purpose she doesn't understand. Her mother was never honest with her. Her mother's work wasn't fighting monsters, but fulfilling the storeworm's wishes. It is said to be a gigantic sea serpent, capable of destroying whole lands. Every week, it needs to be fed sacrifice, or a disaster would arise. That was what Rosemary's mother was doing, and what Rosemary will have to do once her mother has lost her use. Sage. Sage has always been secretive. After all, nobody deserves to know her hard-earned magic. Sage picks up her book and reads a passage. Her spellbook is a gift from her grandmother. The book is her biggest treasure, as it holds all of their family spells. She was the happiest girl on earth the day she got the book, but soon learned how difficult all the spells were. She could never get them right. Sage hit the table. "This is not what was supposed to happen, for God's sake!" Her little companion landed on her shoulder, a small familiar that she created with the help of her magic, or more correctly, invited from the depths of hell. Yeah, I know. I won't give up. I can't. Sage's family has a long history of witchcraft, a long and dark history. Her ancestors were hunted and killed. Most were killed, but some survived. Witch hunting was banned a long time ago, but her family never forgot. That was why Sage was practicing her magic so much. She had to be the first of her family to avenge them. Nobody else was able to do it, due to not having enough magic, or just dying from a magic overload. Sage turned the page. She had to stop this endless road to nowhere. The most magic comes from sacrifices. Elf sacrifices. It was written in a book. Sage guessed nobody was able to get an elf. But Sage was different. She had to be. One day, Sage is working on her magic as usual. She opens her book and starts reading. The leaves on the page start to light up, but the door shoots open and Sage drops the book. The leaves glow and glow till they puff into smoke. The smoke clears and many tiny little bugs emerge. Sage, look at this! Rosemary! Her little familiar swoops in and catches some bugs to eat. Look at this advertisement! We should so go! Did you rip that off of the town board? Not important. Rosemary was Sage's oldest and only friend, if you could call her that. Witches don't have friends. They get in the way. Rosemary is just a tool to get what she needs. Just look at it! Sage takes the paper and reads it. It's to a school for all skill classes. Sage ponders and ponders. Rosemary happily tells Sage her plans. Sage thinks to herself, this is perfect. I can practice more magic here. None of her family members ever went to a real school. This was a perfect way for her to earn her respect. There might even be elves at the school. Parsley hammered the sword and dropped to the ground. She was tired, so very tired, but she can't stop working. Parsley is a dwarf, and dwarfs are well known for their blacksmithing skills. Parsley was one of many children. She loved her siblings, but just wished all of them were alive. Parsley stood up and picked up her hammer again. Dwarves are also known for working to death, but it's just something that comes with a job. You'll never be a good dwarf by not working, told her father every single time Parsley tried to slack. Some of her brothers were the result of overworked death. They tried their best, but died before completing their purpose. Parsley moved her hair out of the way. Her hair had a tinge of black on the roots and ends, a sign of dwarf overwork. Parsley never understood why such a thing happened, but that never stopped her. She hammered the sword. She had to complete her purpose and make her family proud. One day, Parsley was working as usual. One of her little brothers ran in and called her name. Parsley, look what I found! Parsley continued her work. Not now, I'm working. But her brother persisted. Look at this amazing school! It even teaches blacksmithing! Parsley stopped and looked at the paper in his hand. Parsley got an idea. Don't be stupid. They don't teach it all day, every day. Your skills will just get worse if you go. Father won't be very happy, you know. Her little brother looked sadly at the paper. Give it to me. I'll throw it out before Father finds it. Her brother gave away the paper and walked away. Parsley waited till he was gone. She turned the paper around and read it. I have to be the best in my family. I can't let anyone else go. Time has always loved archery. Her mother would always secretly teach her. Archery wasn't something she was allowed to do. Archery was only for male elves. If she would get caught, then, well, Time doesn't know. She has always been good at hiding or pretending she's a boy. The arrow hits the tree. Time is alone now. Her mother had been killed recently. Time never got an answer on what exactly happened. Another arrow hits the tree. Soon after, her father went to find answers. Time hasn't heard from him. Voices sound from nearby. Time curses and picks up her things. It has become harder and harder to hide from other villagers. Soon she might not be able to disguise as a boy. She runs through the forest as fast as she can and darts into some bushes. Footsteps echo around the forest. Soon they disappear. Time sits up. She can't get enough practice in a day with this many people around. But what can she do? It's not like she can move away without her parents. She can't go to an orphanage either. She'll be banned from archery. Time walks back to her house. She should eat first before worrying. She hides her bow and arrows. She picks up her dress and puts it on. Time has always hated dresses. She has to bear it. She has to survive somehow. Time picks up the little money she has and walks to markets. Elves' markets are small and compact. Their people had been slaughtered in the past. The population never recovered from that. Time has no idea if other elves exist outside of their village. Time walks past an advertising board and stops. She looks at the board in confusion. An advert? She thought. Nothing ever happens in this small village. She reads the advertisement in wonder. A school for all? That is something unheard of. Time looks around. She sneakily tears the advert off and runs home. This was the opportunity she needed. Something to finally avenge her mother. There have to be many books there. Something, anything that could solve her parents' disappearance. Maybe she can even end the stigma between male and female elves. Time giggles, picks up her skirt and runs faster. Food can wait. Well, I hope you liked this little impulsive video. So, I don't really have experience in this kind of thing. I'm used to detective, police kind of stories. Anyways, give me your thoughts. Are the characters like the characters in the show, or are they different? Because I have no idea, and I am not watching the show. I hope you enjoyed, and goodbye.